All right, so let's talk a little bit about the rule changes for the playoff formatting a little bit. What do you want to say about that?
So I thought this was something that, people have been talking a lot about, when you have a team with a losing record going into the playoffs. And we've talked about it plenty over the years of doing this. And so I thought, maybe we get into really talking about some of the ways we would change it and how we would want the playoffs to be formatted. And I think a good place to start is what I just mentioned. And we would both agree on this is that you don't have some sort of amendment in the rule book that you don't allow teams with a losing record to make the playoffs.
Yeah, on one hand, it's completely logical. I mean, you just get teams in there that I mean, if you can't get to 500, you have no business being in the playoffs, right? But what you're up against is tradition. You're up against the tradition of the divisional leaders. If you're going to do that, then do away with your division and you just have conferences like you do in basketball. So I don't know what the answer is, but letting a 7-9 team in the playoffs it gives someone an unfair advantage just out of luck. There's nothing you can do to draw a 7-9 team in the playoffs. You just get lucky with that. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I don't know. They don't have this on the board or anything, but I just don't. I don't. I feel very strongly about that. That a team that's not 500, that if you can't get to 500, you have no business playing the postseason. Period.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the word tradition because like I understand tradition and why people like it and like college football is a huge tradition thing and what you have your tradition. But like when you're talking about the best of the best and talking about how much money the NFL brings in, especially on playoff games, like I'm sorry, tradition, you just who cares about tradition at that point? Like as fans, we want to see the best teams play. I'm sure, a team that draws a losing team in the playoffs, would be happy about that. You know what I mean? But and there are going to be people in our comments that are going to mention the 7-9 Seahawks, I believe it was, that went to the playoffs and won a playoff game. It might have been the Panthers. It was one of those. But they went into the playoffs and won a playoff game. I'm almost certain it was the Seahawks, and that's when the beast quake happened against the Saints. And so somebody's going to mention it, right? And that's a once in a blue moon thing. Like the best of the best should always be playing in the playoffs. Like the players, you got to think about the players on that team, the coaches on that team, the playoff bonuses that are in players' contracts and coaches' contracts. Like being a winning football team and not make like the Lions. The Lions should be in the playoffs instead of the Bucks. The Lions should have been in the
Agreed.
playoffs instead of the Seahawks. You could argue the Packers could have also been in there instead of one of those teams. And instead, we're left without those teams and we get a worse product because of it. The 49ers come out, blow out the Seahawks, right? So I just think there's a lot riding on it again at the highest level that you can't have it mired in mediocrity with teams that just don't deserve to be there.
Well, the problem becomes, which is what I said about the conferences, right? The problem is if you don't allow a team without a winning record into the playoffs and you move someone around them, you get an unfair advantage in the divisional system because you get a division like the NFC South was this year, or the NFC East was last year. And so you're getting teams that are getting two games against real shitty teams, and then you look at like what the NFC West was last year, or the AFC East started out, and then the AFC North was this year. So I think that's probably why basketball doesn't have divisions; they have conferences, because you just scramble them all up, and that now it's luck, the luck of the scheduling. You can't do anything about that. But you're not playing. These teams are not playing the same teams twice. Would you be for scrambling this and not playing these teams, not playing the same team twice in a year?
1000%. I've thought for a long time divisions were a bad idea. That which goes into like breaking tradition and not wanting to have losing teams in the playoffs. I just think it makes more sense just having two conferences. You have 16 on each side, and whoever's the best is the best. And you knock it like again, when tiebreakers come down to division records, like if you're in the AFC South, like most years you're just going to have a better division record than somebody else could because your division usually stinks. And so I don't care for divisions. If you took them out, I'd be completely fine with that. I think that would make a lot of things better when it comes to the playoffs. Like, I'm somebody who wasn't a fan of moving to 7 teams for the playoffs. I think it should go back to 6 teams. I think you get a better product with that. And I think either, you would obviously have to change it back to either give the 2 seed the bye week again or nobody gets a bye week. I'm fine with nobody getting a bye week, but I'm not an NFL player. The NFL players would say, go ahead, give the 2 seed back the bye week. That's fine too. The NFL would make less money. Like, they added a playoff team for money purposes, and that's written into the CBA and the media rights deal. So they will not change that. Like, this is all for dead air, basically. But
right.
I'm somebody. If I was changing the play map formatting, I'm changing it back to 6 teams.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we want to hear from you. Type in the comments. What do you think about a team that's an under 500 team getting into the playoffs? Should a team, like for this instance, like should the Lions have been granted a playoff spot rather than the Bucks? Just the Bucks were in because they won their division. We want to hear what you have to say, what you think about it. So leave a message in the comments for us there.